So I don't know if anybody's on here or if anybody can hear me. I've done one of these before, so it's going to kind of be a work in progress and learning experience. Don't know how long it might take for people to see that I'm actually finally live. I think my mic is working, at least after I tested it, it was. Oh, hey there, do we got somebody now? You'll have to excuse me, I'm totally new to doing this. I've never done one before. I see the little person icon, and am I audible now, or? Just trying to see who's coming in to get this thing going so I don't just start rambling to myself, but of course I'm accustomed to doing that quite often. In fact, yeah, like I said before, this is going to be a total work in progress since I totally just kind of rigged this thing up and I'm totally throwing myself out there. So, dun, 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 dun. I don't know if I'm supposed to go ahead and start or wait till some people pop in, or oh man, this is just like radio all over again, worrying about dead air and dead airspace. I don't know if I should start rambling on until people come in, or looks like I've got enough light behind me. I was trying to make sure I had enough light and try and find a decent enough background. Then I'm like, oh wait, my overflowing DVD and media shelves, yeah, that'll work, and totally show that I ran out of space way too long ago. So if anybody joins in, just drop a comment below. Let me know. I just want to make sure that I'm audible and visible and everything. Again, this is a total work in progress, so I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. So anyhow, I don't know how many people are going to jump on. I sent some invites out on some of the Facebook groups, but it just totally kind of pretty much inspired by what Sam Hatch Culture Dog was doing, and just looks so fun. I figured I'd finally try it myself, although I was hoping at least a couple people would jump on, but I don't know, it might take a minute or a few minutes to get everything going. So I just wanted to kind of hang out for a minute or two before I just start jumping into some of the stuff I found this week, and you know, just sort of like a small little update and just an intimate, no frills discussion. That's why I try to do my videos no frills. I kind of prefer that. It's much easier as if I'm just talking to another person in front of me, and not all fancy and over stylized and 5,000 reminders to link and subscribe and so on and so forth. But anyhow, just figured I'd finally give it a shot, since I was like, you know, I've never actually tried live streaming. So let's see, we have anybody else? Let's see, check on these and see if anybody's. Let me see if anybody's. if anybody pops in, go ahead and post and let me know so I can get started. I just didn't want to start rambling on and then totally have you know, people jump in later and say, hey, what'd you say? Let's see. Let's see if people may have jumped over to the other one. Sorry, again, I know this is total dead air. It reminds me of my college radio days. I always tried my darndest to never have dead air or dead airspace whatsoever, which is, of course, difficult when you're by yourself doing multi-hour long shows and stuff. Let me see if I can get these guys. Let's see. Well, hopefully we can get some people in here. Like I said, make sure that I'm actually being heard and seen and everything. We've got a couple people in here before I just start going on and on. So let's see. You'll just have to bear with me again. I hate to keep saying that. Like I said, I've never done one of these before, so I'm just kind of testing the waters and, you know, made sure my webcam was going. And, you know, just always nice to hang out and talk about Laserdisc to people actually who actually know what they are. And I can't tell you the number of times I start talking about them in stores with people and all of a sudden realize they have no idea what I'm talking about, or they think I'm talking about something else, or they think Laserdisc is one thing and it turns out no, they're thinking about something else, or then they start talking about CEDs and I'm like, no, God, that's not the same. All right, well, it's nice anyway. You know? At least there's like a glimmer of possibility that you're a fellow Laserdisc fan out in the wild. But anyhow, I know there's supposed to be some people coming in. Let me see if I can see where they are. Oh, this is totally riveting for everybody, especially if you're going to come in later and look at some of this. Like, you know, like 20 or 30 minutes of me trying to figure this thing out and get it going and wait for some people to come in and so on and so forth. And if anybody jumps in, please go ahead and comment down below. Let me know that I'm actually rambling and you can hear me or see me and everything. So if I can actually get this thing going, you'll probably easily be able to skip like the first 20 or so minutes of this live stream. And it's, you know, 20 minutes of dude trying to figure out how to make a live stream work and wait for people to get in and stuff. I feel a bit ridiculous. Let's see. See if I can get. I guess I'm just trying to see if I can get some people in here first. I'm gonna send another message to the Facebook group and see if I can get some folks on here. see if I can get. Da, 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 da. The only trouble is it's just hard to coordinate whenever anybody's available, and then again, I'm just feeling my way through this since I've never done one of these before. So again, as soon as anybody pops in, just comment below and let me know that I'm actually here. I know, again, this is just like totally like, going to blow everybody's socks off. Dude staring at his phone, dude trying to make sure that people are around and coming in and stuff. Well, I think that's about enough of me kind of hanging out and seeing if I can get anybody coming in. I guess if anybody's gonna come in, they'll start coming in a minute or two, and then again, just let me know and start posting below that I'm actually audible. And I guess what I'll do is I'll start with some of the finds that I've found in the past week. I actually came across a really nice amount of discs locally in a shop. I think somebody traded in a collection, and a lot of titles in like sealed, minty shapes and pretty uncommon stuff. Unfortunately, there were a couple that kind of had. It took me a minute to notice because I was looking. I was like, "Wow, look at all these great titles, and they're not super expensive." And then I started noticing, what are these odd-looking little marks? And at first, I thought it was dirt, and it looks like it actually had gotten some like very, very light mildewing underneath the shrink wrap of some of the sealed titles, which was just like, oh man, why? So I did pick up a couple of those, and some were okay. And then I got home and there were a couple more that were just kind of like, yeah, this is a little more than I thought. So there's two or three that I'm like, man, I really wish I could get these cleaned up. So I'm going to try and rescue those. And I'm going to make a video about a new upload video about the ones I just picked up this past week. I just finished and uploaded my upload for March for Laserdisc, and just posted that before I started this stream. And then literally as I was finishing cutting that together, I just found a whole bunch of new discs, and so much so that it's enough for a whole other video. So I really need to do March part 2, or I'm sure if I wait long enough till it's at least April 1st and do one for April, I'll have double the amount, because it's always the same with collecting. Just as soon as you think you're out, they pull you right back in with more shiny discs that you didn't think you needed in your life. But anyway, I actually found this one last night. I stopped by one of the local shops. I stop in every once in a while, and occasionally they have new stock mixed in, and they have it at the end, so you can kind of see it as you're walking up to it. But it's usually the same ones over and over and over again. And I'm walking back there, and I'm like, okay, those are the usual ones. And then I see a large shape poking out with a certain cover image, and I'm like, no, it can't be that one. It's got to be the standard Warner Brothers pressing with, just stacked on top of other discs. You can't possibly want those. And I get closer and closer, and sure enough, see that it is indeed what I was hoping it was. The big special expanded version of Wyatt Earp, the big deluxe collector's Laserdisc box set. This is the, I think it's 212-minute long extended cut, supervised by Lawrence Kasdan, the director. And as far as I know, this is not available on any other release. Every other DVD, the standard Laserdisc, the Blu-ray, is all the theatrical cut, which is about like 191 minutes. So it's about 20 minutes of extra footage in here. And I think some of these scenes are some of the DVDs and the Blu-ray is like extras, and you can watch the deleted scenes, but I don't think it's all of them. And it's kind of interesting. Of course, this film came out the same time as Tombstone, and kind of went head to head. And this is kind of the one that didn't make as much money and wasn't as critically favored, and audiences didn't like it as much. But that being said, Tombstone actually was about I think it's rumored to be about a 3-hour runtime originally, and it was cut down to, you know, a bit over 2 hours. And of course, there's all the trouble it had with the original director getting replaced, and then it's kind of come out eventually that Kurt Russell kind of ghost directed most of it, even though it's credited to George P. Cosmatos, who was credited with Rambo 2, which is another scenario where it's suggested it was perhaps ghost directed by Stallone or something. But anyway, I've seen, you know, the Tombstone Laserdisc has some deleted scenes at the very end, some of which are pretty good, some, but they're really, you know, like not super important. And then those are extras on the DVD, sorry, on the Blu-ray, and the, no, I take that back, they're extras on the special edition DVD, because they've been reincorporated into that director's cut, which is now exclusive only to that disc. But one of those scenes is only on the Laserdisc. But anyway, I think it's kind of interesting that Tombstone was supposed to originally run a lot longer, and so was Wyatt Earp. So I'm really excited to check this guy out and, you know, actually see what the long version's like. It's pretty nice. It's spread out over multiple discs. It includes a making of book, or actually I think it's more of a book on the historical Wyatt Earp himself. But yeah, these things are super rare. Let me show you the back. They don't come up too often. It's pretty straightforward on the back. It's just got a Dolby Surround PCM track. I don't think this thing has. Yeah, this doesn't have AC3 that I know of, and neither does the standard one. So this one you get a nice bit of extras and the exclusive long cut and hardcover. Well, I think it's like actually more of a soft cover book in here. But I just never expected to find this, and certainly not for $4.99. So that was absolutely fantastic to do. And I'm just really excited to finally have this thing. It's really, you know, it looks pretty nice in the hand. I'd say it's pretty much similar size as the Dirty Harry box set that Warner put out. So if you've had that, just imagine that entire box being nothing but Wyatt Earp. So I'm interested to check this out and see if the long cut of this it really has anything over the standard version or not. So, and again, this is the only way to see it. So if you'll have to track this down, and usually this thing goes for a lot of money. So I'm going to hope to see if it's actually worth it or not. So that's the big rare one I found last night. But there was one other one that popped up on eBay this past week. Actually, I think it was about a week and a half ago, because it took a little while to get here. But anyway, it was one of those where it popped up. I've got to save search for a couple different things just in case it actually pops up. But this was one, and I looked at the image for a second. I'm like, you know, that, because it was kind of like a little far off, and it looks similar to box one. And I never really intended to get all these because they're super expensive and rare and stuff. But you know, if they ever popped up in the wild for cheap, I was like, well, okay. And I looked at it, and I'm like, well, that looks like volume 1. And then I look closer, and I'm like, but the number's different. I'm like, wait, is that volume 4? So I went with it, and lo and behold, this just showed up on the porch this morning. This is the Golden Age of Looney Tunes, volume 4. And if any of you guys out there know, you know, the Golden Age of Looney Tunes boxes are really well sought after, well, by not just Laserdisc collectors, but animation fans, animation collectors, animation historians, because all of these were pre-Turner restoration for the most part, and they were primarily sourced from dye transfer Technicolor prints held in the studio vaults, and I think also from some collectors, and then the best surviving black and white nitrate prints they could find for the pre-color shorts. And they did 5 volumes, with each volume getting less and less printed. And volume 5 is the one that's incredibly rare. And if it pops up, it usually goes for well over $200 or so. But it's actually kind of ironic. I never thought I'd have any of these. And in the past, since I started making my March video, I managed to pick up the first 4 volumes, so just out of the blue, and all of them for like really good prices, like less than $20 each. I paid a little bit more for this one because this one, as I said, they go and they get more and more increasingly rare and valuable as you go up. So 2 is harder to find than 1, 3 is much harder to find than 2, and 4 is extremely hard to find. And if you look this up on the Laserdisc database right now, this thing, there's at least a seller selling it for $70, which is about what this thing can usually go for. And all these shorts, again, they're before what's known as the Turner restoration, and that was where Turner, who owned the rights at that time and still pretty much holds it underneath the Warner imprint, they went back and tried to do a cleanup and overall reworking of all the classic shorts. And so that's what you'll see, the like 90s Turner credit at the end of so many Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies shorts. And but in that process, they kind of standardized some things, and some people argue that the color work isn't necessarily the greatest, and the audio work isn't necessarily the greatest, and there were some edits made, and then there are certain cartoons censored or are now unavailable. And some of those are scattered across these 5 sets, so they are very important. Box 1 is the one that has that had a repressing that removed some of the shorts that were deemed offensive to modern standards and such. And so on Box 1, you have to look for the first pressing to get all of the. I think it's just 1 short that was removed. It may be 2, but it's like 1 or 2 shorts that were removed. And so the only way to see some of these shorts is actually tracking down all 5 of these boxes. And also by doing that, you get like untouched, really beautiful looking transfers. So I'm really excited to finally see these for myself. Again, just really happy to find this, and now maybe one day I can find Box 5, which will probably go up there with The World's Not Enough as being my like second holy grail, because they never come around. If they do, you're going to be paying a couple $100. So if I go through every disc that I picked up in the past week and a half, it's basically enough for one of my usual videos. So I would be here for like 6 hours. I think YouTube said the restriction on live streams are like 8 hours, and trust me, if I get started about film history and film theory, or even just transfer discussions, I can blink and there's 8 hours gone. So I just wanted to show off the 2 big ones that I picked up recently, and just kind of, well, not exactly show them off, but it's just really nice to finally find these and be able to check them out. There is one other Laserdisc related item that I figured I'd show. It's a custom special edition. I didn't even know I had this until last night. I was doing some reorganizing of my shelves and stuff, and so I'll pull discs off and send them in like a little box. I have like a little cardboard box to flip through, because I have like a weird shelf ordering system. I go by series subject, and then I usually just go by order of release. But so I was doing that, and I hear this noise, and I turn around and find that one of my discs had suddenly become a special edition. So this is I guess what you'd call a CBS Fox Dog Special Edition. This was my copy of Song of Bernadette, and my dog decided while I was reshelving and stuff that sometimes he has this weird habit. He likes to go for cardboard boxes, and I should have thought of that. But I thought that's what he had done, and then I saw, oh no, no, he went even further. So this is my new special edition, and it's a one-of-a-kind exclusive. So I guess this is just a warning. Make sure to not leave your discs around if your dog likes to chew cardboard. So yeah, just shelving and reshelving and moving discs around. And all of a sudden I heard this big rip noise, and I'm like, wait, did something fall over? And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. My dog has decided to redo the work done by, I think this was Pioneer back then. So it was a nice minty disc, but not so much anymore. So just a fun little thing I thought I'd show. I did pick up a couple of, movies on other formats. I always have to try and hold back because, as you can see, I don't really have any space for anything. This is just one section of my I've got discs and books everywhere, and I'm kind of crammed into a smaller space for the time being. So it's really kind of difficult to have anything within easy access or organized, or let alone display. I mean, display is really difficult. Sometimes I just settle for having everything on the shelf for a change. But I did pick up one DVD. This is actually something I wanted to see for a long while. I think I've seen like part of one of the episodes. Oh, hey Pete, how are you? Hopefully you can hear me okay. Just drop me a comment there. Took me about 15 minutes to get going and make sure that I was actually visible. But yeah, I picked up this is, one I've known of for a long while. It's one of the great adventure serials from the classic period of, chapter serials that you go to the theater every week to see the next installment. There's a couple releases of this. There's a lot of serial releases. Oh, cool. Thanks for the vote of confidence. But this was just dirt cheap, and I've wanted to see this run entirely. This is the Roan VCI release of Zorro's Fighting Legion. This is one of the great action-adventure serials. There's a lot of people that swear by this as being, one of the great, if not one of the greatest, simply for the action and stunts here. And if I'm remembering correctly, this one was the serial that Yakimet Kanut worked on. And I think this is the one where he tried to do the famous transfer onto the stagecoach and then going under the stagecoach, and that's what this is where Spielberg got the idea to rework it and put it in the Raiders of the Lost Ark truck chase. So this is definitely highly recommended for serial fans, or just classic adventure fans, or just adventure fans in general. But I'm really happy to finally be able to see the whole run. And I've kind of hauled off on watching a lot of serials for a while because, they're public domain for the most part. And then if they do get a release, it's, like really crappy, transfer stuff. So you got to do a lot of work on trying to figure out which one is good enough. And I know for Zorro's Fighting Legion, there's like at least 2 or 3 that are, recommended, but I just figured, I've wanted to see this for ages, and it was in a local shop, so I've said yes, finally. All right. Pete says, would you prefer to get the AC3 Laserdisc or DTS Laserdisc of Independence Day? I gotta say, I know I think I mentioned this on Culture Dog's stream, but that's actually one common that I still don't have. I have like 800 discs, and there are still a few commons that I haven't managed to pick up yet. I'd love to pick up either one. The reason why I haven't picked up the AC3 one yet is every time I find one, it's in one of those places where they just charge $10 for a Laserdisc just because, or they think it's rare or something. I'm like, no. Or it's like, beat to crap, or like my... it looks like my special dog edition and it still costs $10, and I'm like, no. So, if I can actually find one that's in good shape and not beat up, I'll just go ahead and pick up the AC3 one just to check it out. But of course, if I could get the DTS, if I ever found a copy that was, affordable, I'd definitely go for that. I'm total audio junkie, and the 3 DTS discs that I do have, I've watched like 1,000 times just because I'm so excited to finally have a DTS disc and check it out. But that being said, as much as you like to get into the numbers of DTS being like, almost 1600 kilobits per second on Laserdisc versus AC3 being 384 kilobits per second. When I first started getting into this stuff, I was like, wow, DTS would just totally obliterate the AC3. Why would Dolby have such a low bit rate they were using? But if you, when you actually look at it in practice in a home theater environment, hang on, excuse me, let me get some water. I've been rambling too much. But when you actually look at these in a home theater environment and you put them side by side, if the mix is the same and the master is the same, Dolby really holds its own in the AC3 codec, because this was, of course, before they were doing EQ and near field remixing for the most part and everything. So I gotta say, I've been really impressed by AC3. Of course, you got to go through all the hoops of getting a demodulator and everything. But, you also get the benefit of having the PCM Dolby Surround if you don't have AC3 capability, or you just want to listen to it in stereo or on headphones. And the other thing I should mention I've found is some players really do have trouble with DTS, even though it should be simple and it's just using the digital output. Some players, because I don't know what it is, it's something about DTS requires so much from the player output. I know my first player at Pioneer D702, it was kind of, iffy, and it still ran, like the side flip didn't work, but I did some tinkering and got everything else working. And that was my first experience and my first actual player I owned. But it absolutely hated DTS discs. It just, the audio dropped out entirely. And, it's just something that some players have a real hard time with. So that is something to consider. And that, combined with the extreme expense, you can basically go out and get the AC3 Laserdisc, the DVD, the special DVD reissue, the Blu-ray, every other version of Independence Day possible, and still not be paying what you pay for the DTS Laserdisc. So it's one of those where, it'd be nice if you had the DTS, but, it's not really going to be a cost-effective plan. Let's see, the Aliens Laserdisc you brought was meant to be scanned from the original negative. Are you talking about the THX theatrical cut reissue from my one of my last uploads? Because I think that's correct. Yeah, it was a brand new transfer. It certainly looks better than the extended box set. But of course, that's an older pressing, and it was mastered back then, a couple years before at least, and I don't think was from the negative or anything. And of course, that box set is very rot prone, as a lot of people have found out. I haven't watched the theatrical cut reissue all the way through yet, but I did kind of do a quick spot check, and I mean, the picture quality is really impressive, like everybody says. Even though I don't have like any fancy scaling devices and stuff, my TV is pretty revealing of flaws, especially for Laserdisc. I have the Sony XPR 960 HT CRT, which has a beautiful comb filter, so I can get some results that are similar to what people are doing with their Lumigens and DVDOs and stuff, of course, with the inherent flaws and quirks of an HT CRT. But I will say I was really impressed, and I've really got to get time to sit down and watch the whole thing. But yeah, it is very good for picture quality, and it's not expensive, so it's definitely a good demo disc for people to pick up, even if they don't have AC3 capability. Let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, I did pick up 2 Blu-rays recently. This one, it's definitely one I haven't seen because it was never released on DVD, and it was one that Fox did at least for a couple years, they did a vote for a new Blu-ray release, and this one got voted because it never got in DVD. I think it may have a Laserdisc release, but it's like very uncommon, or it may not have one at all. I don't know. But this is actually the Best Picture winner of, I think it's 1933. Yeah, the Best Picture winner of 1933. This is the Fox release of Cavalcade, and again, I've never seen this, and it's been, pretty much lost and unavailable for decades. So you can actually pick this up. It was in the Best Buy $5 bin, so you can actually now get it for $4 or $5 at Best Buy, and it comes with a DVD version. So now technically, it's finally come to DVD, and it does have the Fox movie tone, and the only real extra it has is a Richard Schickel commentary. And if you've ever heard a Richard Schickel commentary, that's not really an extra. That's not even really a. I mean, I think it would be an insult to call that something to fall asleep to, because it's so boring you can't even fall asleep. But anyway, you never know. Sometimes there's nuggets of information in there, but usually I had my fill of Richard Schickel commentaries. But anyway. Definitely recommended for film history and film history nerds like myself, essentially, because there's not really another release of it. But just interested to finally be able to see that. I've read about it. Let's see. Kind of baffles me that so many older movies have tweaks in color and sound. Used to think it was Star Wars only, and I found out the dark side of home video. That's true. Yeah, you get started with one thing. That's how I got into Laserdisc. I started for two things only, just two. It was Star Wars and the Bond films, because kind of what got me into just questioning all this stuff. Part of it was Star Wars. I know the first time I wrote into a studio was I wrote MGM after the special extended English language version of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly came out in 2003. And I was just, barely in high school, and I just found Leone about a year before. And, I started wondering why they made some decisions they made and why the sound was all messed up. And then came the horror of the 2004 Star Wars DVD release. I still remember waiting in line, and it was at Toys R Us because they had the best deal, and I had special ordered it, and I was there on release day. And then you take it home and you unbox it, you put it in, and of course I was a kid, so I had I was just running a DVD player composite into a pretty decent 27-inch CRT. And seeing the horror of what happened. And, like I said, I was, like barely in high school, and I didn't know the terminology of what I was looking at. But even then I knew, man, something is really wrong. And then came the Lowry work on the Bond series in 2006, and that's what did it. When they had all the color fiascos, and some of them were missing the original audio tracks, and those awful 5.1 remixes. And that's like, the two tenets of my main obsession, Star Wars and Bond, and those getting messed with, and then getting heavy into online forums and stuff. It's just it's a gigantic rabbit hole, and you find one and then another and another. And I got hooked on Laserdisc for those two things, and then realizing that so many films had their original tracks either remixed or overly noise reduced, and suffered from a lot of the same problems that audiophiles talk about with music albums being remastered for CD and download and stuff, and losing dynamics. And I'm like, well, has anybody ever thought about what happens to film sound? Because the more and more I look at it, it's like it's exactly the same thing, but yet you go on Blu-ray.com and you read the latest Blu-ray and review, and it's got a 4.5 out of 5 for picture quality, and you read that, and that makes sense. And then you look at the audio, and it's just got like a 5, and you're like, huh? I mean, it's like they just say, okay, it's there, or they say, oh well, the original mix wasn't that great. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it sounds like it's in a tin can, and I can even go back to a DVD or the Laserdisc, and sometimes if you have a VHS tape of something, it could sound better. And it's like, there's something wrong with this here. We have lossless audio, and it's like, why bother? A lossy DVD track could be better at times. But anyway, yeah, it's all about research. The more and more you research, just don't be afraid to look something up, and then you're going to realize you have to have like 15 copies of the same movie, and people are going to think you're crazy. But that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Let's see. Ah, question. I actually have been asked this question before. So your son is turning 10 next week. Is he ready for Bond? My first was Moonraker around that age. And if so, do I start with Dr. No? Well, a lot of people ask this question, they're like, how should I show my kids Star Wars? What order should I go in? And I know everybody has their own opinion on that, which is understandable. But for me, the Bond question is even more important because that's how I got started in all this mess to begin with. That's and I didn't see them in order, and that still bothers me because I'm such a purist and a film historian, and if I try to see anything, I try to see it chronologically. And every time I rewatch the entire series, which I usually do at least once or twice a year, I go chronologically because you can see the growth and change over the years, and you see it's really important to see, because it was a tight knit crew and they always viewed it as sort of like a family atmosphere. And you can see new people coming in and then some people eventually leaving. And then you see when they come back, whether it be whether it be Guy Hamilton directing Goldfinger and then coming back later, or Terrence Young directing the first two and not doing Goldfinger and coming back for Thunderball. If you watch the first four in a row, you can totally tell which one of the four is the odd one out because Goldfinger has a totally different tone. Even though it's, just as taut as the first two, it doesn't have the, drive and drama and attention to, being a serious spy story that Terrence Young put into him. And even though Thunderball does have some pacing issues, right from the opening title sequence, it's like we're right back to where we were, in the first two. But starting for kids, I think that's a harder question because you got to think about, what their preferences are and, what they might like. I think it helps to get them hooked on one and then saying, hey, did you know there's more? There's literally more of these? Because I started with Live and Let Die. Live and Let Die was my first. That was the first tape I ever rented from a video rental store. I was about 3.5 years old, and that was it for me. That was literally, I rented that tape every single week. I wanted to buy one. I finally bought my own tape copy. I was about 4 or 5. I mean, I remember seeing the pamphlets and the posters on the wall, and you had to special order because stores didn't carry them, and they were $14.95 each. And so I grew up, it was like every time I found a new one, it was like it all started all over again. It was just like my mind exploded. And I went totally out of order. And again, that totally kills my film purist historian self. So I totally went out of order. I rented Live and Let Die first, and then they got more tapes in the store, and then I went right to A View to a Kill, and it didn't matter to me that there was a difference in time and age or anything. And I just kind of went all over the place depending on what video store had which film, because of course this was back during the days of not being able to find anything. I think I dropped out there for a second. Am I back up, guys? Just let me know. Give me a shout. Yeah, I think I dropped out there for a second. Okay, cool. But anyway, so long story short, I'd say for starting with Bond, it'd be easiest to just go chronologically, and I recommend that for everybody who has never seen them or has only seen one or two, because it makes a lot more sense. And if you watch the original series start to finish in chronological order, that's literally film school in on a shelf. You will literally learn everything you ever need to know. and I can argue to the death for the greatness of any of them. But for a 10-year-old, that's kind of uh, that's kind of a harder question. So I'd say maybe I don't know if they kind of like lighter stuff. Moonraker might be a good one to start with. I think Live and Let Die worked for me because I think that's the most straightforward adventure film of the series, and it's a little bit different in tone. It actually is a lot darker than what most people think the Roger Moore run is like. It's the only one that Tom Mankiewicz wrote by himself. And in a lot of ways, it's similar to Dr. No. It's a bit lower key and allows you to sort of get used to the, escapism and the idea of the character, I think. So I think that's why it's actually a pretty good gateway one. But again, the easiest idea would be just going chronologically. And just letting them see how it started from the beginning. But again, I'd say try to figure out which one you think they'd like and start them with one and then be like, you do realize there's a lot more, right? Of course, you could be like really facetious and be like, yes, there's this really great movie. You'll love it. It's called Never Say Never Again. No, it's not that bad, but of course, I show people Casino Royale 67 all the time because I'm like gone insane. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic, really. I have a great time every time I watch it. And when I grew up as a kid, I was like, man, what the heck is this? I've been sold the wrong thing. This isn't a Bond movie. What is going on? I love David Niven, but I don't get this. This is terrible. And then I think after I saw it for about the 10th time, it suddenly dawned on me, this is really great. It's like a pop art masterpiece. It's everything the Austin Powers films want to be without all the crappy toilet humor, and all the jokes are pretty witty, and it's hysterical for Bond fans. So yeah, so I'd even say, if kids like comedies, and they like adventure films, well, they might like Casino Royale 67 because I did. But then again, I was a very strange child. Let's see. The 5.1 and 7.1 mixes of Jaws are criminal. The sound won an Oscar, for Christ's sake. Yes, exactly. Quint's monologue scene looks wrong on the Blu-ray. Yeah, I can totally agree on that. Jaws is one where I've actually said this before many different times. I think the mono mix on Jaws is one of the best mono tracks ever done. I think it's like it's about the pinnacle of single channel film mixing. And when I finally got to hear it, because when I was growing up, first there was the 92 version with some music rescored, and I first saw it on a TV broadcast, and then that awful 5.1 mix appeared on the first DVD, and that's just terrible. That's like one of the worst 5.1 tracks ever. With the totally out there, inappropriate sound effects foleyed over everything, just super loud. And then at least the 7.1 mix dials that back on the Blu-ray and the new HD restoration master. So I did appreciate that, but it's totally unnecessary. And they should have presented the original mono untouched. At least it's in lossless on the Blu-ray, but if you stack it up against the 2005 DVD that had it, and then of course the signature Laserdisc, it doesn't compare because it's been tweaked, and just like anything, even if the original mono is on a Blu-ray, that doesn't mean it's going to sound as good as it should. And then people go, oh man, mono sucks. The sound sucked back then. Listen to how much clearer it is on the 7.1. Well, it may be clearer on your system, but it's not what they originally intended for you to hear. They didn't personally make that mix, and you're not getting the original sonic intent of what the production team intended. And with Jaws, it's really critical because that mono mix is so good you'd swear it's stereo half the time. I mean, it's fantastic. I think the only mono track I've ever heard that really outdoes that in terms of so many things going on and the John Williams score being full force and stuff is actually the mono mix for Star Wars, which to me, it's just fantastic, and is ironically the best mix of the film. For all the barriers Star Wars broke in terms of getting theaters to adopt Dolby Stereo, which they really hadn't been doing. Dolby Stereo first premiered on the 76 Star is Born, and very few places, it was like, this will pass, mono is fine, we've been mono forever. And then Star Wars came, and that really was the gateway for people to really be like, we're finally going to upgrade our theaters. And then the 70 millimeter blow up version was like a beefier version of that mix because it was discrete and had the baby boom bass enhancement. But the mono was done last, and that was the one intended to be the definitive one because everybody would see the general release 35 mil version and have the that was going to be the mono mix. So it had all the tweaks and the line fixes and the additional dialogue put in. And then most of that stuff finally got pulled and put in the 97 special edition mix. Just like Empire had some of the mono mix differences put in the special edition mix. So, and of course, this stuff is really important. And most of the time, it's just not available and nobody does research and nobody thinks it's important. As far as the color timing, I do kind of agree that I know they did a little bit of grain removal, which you have to do at some point, so that's understandable. But I do think some of the color looks a little bit weird, and I have a long history with researching these Spielberg reissues because I'm one of the first people that kind of raised the cry on, hey, Raiders looks really weird now. I saw a very early. Actually a 35 millimeter print screening of the new HD restoration that Paramount did with Spielberg supervising. This was like a year before the Blu-ray came out. It was before even the IMAX reissue. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this doesn't seem right. I've seen, different versions of it, and yeah, at least I kind of have a general idea of what it's supposed to look like, and it keeps going. I'm like, something doesn't seem right here. And the more you dig around, you realize that, Spielberg supervised a retiming of the new HD scan. You can see the old Raiders HD scan, and it looks much better, literally. And that new Raiders mix is just awful. I hate it. I can't stand it. I don't know why they did it. There are other alternate Raiders mixes out there that are not on official releases. So I always just watch the letterbox Laserdisc because it has the snake reflection. It doesn't have any alterations, and the sound mix on that is my favorite. It's just like in your face, sounds great, and is not the original Dolby Stereo that's on the old analog Laserdisc. So nobody knows where this widescreen Laserdisc track came from, and it's not the 5.1 from the DVD, which is supposed to be from the 70 millimeter release. So that's just one of those oddities I've never been able to figure out, but that's my favorite one. So that's why I tell people, if you want to watch Raiders, watch the Laserdisc. It's not messed with, and the sound is great. And then they look at me like, what's a snake reflection? And I'm like, if you see it, then you'll get it. But Spielberg has made sure that you can't see that. And actually, I feel the same about Close Encounters. The new 4K looks great, except for the fact that they've messed around with the color some. And it's like, oh, that doesn't seem right. The old Blu-ray was fine, even though it's now, really out of date. And a lot of people swear that the original 70 millimeter Close Encounters mix was amazing, and they cut a lot of the bass out for the special edition. And then people swear that it's never sounded as good. So at least the mix on the 5.1 on Close Encounters, it doesn't really change anything that I know of. It does sound pretty good. It sounds, like a beefier version of like what you hear on the Criterion Laser or the Columbia Special Edition Laserdisc, if you have one that's not rotted. And it sounds pretty close to the Collector's Edition AC3. So they all sound about the same. So that's at least one where I don't think they did any, audio tomfoolery. But yeah, all these Spielberg titles being remastered, it's kind of really been a mixed bag. I mean, it's nice they're doing it, but every time they do it, I'm like, oh no, what are they going to change? What are they going to change? I'm still pissed that they released Dual on Blu-ray and 178 instead of 133, and I'm like, no, it's supposed to be 133. I've seen it theatrically at 133 in the long version. It was beautiful. So that's one. I finally found the Laserdisc for it to go with my DVD, and that still they put it out in 178. Let's see. Mainstream media lied about the 7.1 mix being faithful to the mono. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's more faithful than the old 5.1 was. But it's like how they said the multi-channel remix on Psycho is faithful to the mono. Well, I mean, faithful maybe in that it's the same mix, and they've just spread it all out over like 8 channels, 7 channels and a subwoofer, and it's, I mean, it's faithful in the fact that, the dialogue's all there, but the emphasis is all different. They've moved it around. They've made creative decisions and so on and so forth, and done EQ and noise compression and things like that. So it's not the original source. And yeah, actually on Psycho, you have to go get the UK Blu-ray to get a better quality mono track, and even that, it's technically lossless, but it's not like a super full bitrate lossless, but it is better than the US one, which is just like I think it's like a lossy Dolby Digital track. And of course, now the new German box set of all the Psycho films has the special German version of Psycho that's been floating around with the few seconds of additional footage that people have been wondering about for years, if that's like a lost, uncensored, uncut version. I don't really think it is. I think it's probably like an export version that's slightly different, but that's now available. Supposed to have a better mono too. All right, let's see. Oh, last Blu-ray I had picked up. This is one of the few modern films I really, really like. This is the Polanski's film, The Ghostwriter. This one actually is the Canadian one, though, because I was, you can get the regular US one, pretty common, but it's one of those early Blu-rays that's a flipper disc with a DVD on the other side, which those are really terrible. They scratch very easily. But the audio track on the US Blu-ray, even though it's a really nice lossless track, is supposed to be like very slightly censored, like some swear words are supposed to be removed. And so I just stumbled across that on one of the Blu-ray forums, and I hadn't seen the film in a while, but they said the Canadian one was uncut and still had lossless audio and stuff, and it wasn't a terrible Blu-ray DVD combo flipper disc. So yeah, I picked this one up. I managed to finally find it. And so, yeah, if you want to see The Ghostwriter, you can get the US Blu-ray, but the UK and Canadian ones are supposed to be fully uncensored on the audio track. I definitely recommend this film. It's really great, and it's one of the really good non-Bond Brosnan films that he's been able to do after Bond. And I definitely think it's Polanski's best film of like the past, while or so. But anyway, really great modern film, and definitely try and find this Canadian one. Let's see. Sorry, I missed. Oh, no. You're fine, Melinda. Yeah, I was kind of rambling for a while. I didn't know if anybody was coming in or if I was even visible or anything. I started talking about one or two of the laser pickups I'd made. I don't know if everybody saw that. I don't know. Do you guys want me to repeat that? It's just like 2 or 3. I don't know if anybody saw that part. Mono of the Terminator is much grittier and cooler than the 5.1. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like don't even bother with the 5.1. It's night and day. I remember my dad rented the Terminator DVD when they put out the 5.1, and I'd only seen part of the film at that point. And I was like, nah, I'm not really into, Schwarzenegger, 80s action movies and stuff, and I'm not a Cameron fan. And I just got sucked into it, and I still think the Terminator's absolutely fantastic, and it's literally the best thing Cameron's ever done. But yeah, I remember I was like, this sounds kind of weird. And as very often my dad would rent something and fall asleep like 20 minutes in. And me being the geek I already was at that point, I went to the menu and I looked at the audio options and saw the other track was mono. And I'm like, well, this is from the 80s. Why would it be mono? But okay, I'll give it a try. And I switched over and I'm like, oh my God, this is so much better. Why did like, this is so much better. And that was literally the first time I was actually watching the film. And yeah. And I know they cheaped out on not paying for Dolby Stereo because it was a low-budget movie and they wanted to save money for the effects. And I know Cameron hates that they did that and they did this remix and stuff. But honestly, the mono really works. I know I said Jaws and Star Wars are like my pinnacle of mono mixing, but Terminator's a great mono mix. It's really good. And in a home theater environment, you run that THX Letterbox Laserdisc reissue, and it's great. There are a lot of times you swear you know, you're actually listening to a stereo track. You know, there's sometimes where it's obviously a bit narrow because it is mono, but it does open up well, and it's a really great mix. So they shouldn't have messed with it. Um, let's see. Okay, what is your holy grail for Laserdisc? Is there something you're looking for because it is only on Laserdisc? Well, the first part of that is an easy question, and I know I've said it on the Facebook groups a million times, but it's the Japanese world is not enough because that's the one Bond title that I don't have. And that's why I was so excited to finally be able to review one when Peter Biancardi sent his copy for me to review along with those other Japanese ones, because that was always like my white whale. I knew it was expensive. I knew it was one of the Japanese late releases. And the reason why I wanted to check it out is just to see if there's any transfer differences. So if you haven't seen my video on that, it's a separate upload. It's just me talking about the Japanese Bond titles that Peter sent me to review. But yeah, I mean, I'm so glad to finally have seen it. I still want it terribly, but I can't afford one. You know, when a good used price is like between $100 and $200, and an average is like $300 to $400 or so. But I will say that, you know, it does have some really nice color. The picture detail is really great. But other than that, you know, it's pretty darn. It's like really close to the old special edition DVD. So it didn't really, you know, it can't really justify the like $300 price tag when I kept toggling them side by side, and I'm like, well, this one has a little bit more color, but I think that's because it's composite analog and this one's component digital and the sound is like identical. But yeah, I got way too much into the comparison on that. But in terms of only being on Laserdisc, actually the two titles I went over at the start are actually technically exclusives. The Wyatt Earp long version that I just found yesterday, and the you know, Golden Age of Looney Tunes boxes for being the you know, untouched pre-Turner restoration shorts, and being from, you know, dye transfer Technicolor prints and black and white nitrate original prints, and having some of the censored cartoons and cartoons that have never been reissued. So of course that's why they have the extremely high price tags. And of course, I guess besides World Is Not Enough, now my new holy grail is Golden Age of Looney Tunes Volume 5, because, you know, you're not only competing with Laserdisc collectors, but animation collectors and animation historians, because they are very important. And a lot of that stuff, you know, it's not ever going to be reissued for the time being. It's the same thing with the Tex Avery box set. That's why, you know, that thing goes for, you know, $50 or more, because not all of the shorts are out there. Some are only in Region 2 and PAL, and some still have censoring, the ones that have been released over here. Did your Wyatt Earp box come with the insert? Actually, yeah, I do think so. Which, and it actually looks pretty nice. I haven't gotten to really go over this yet because I literally just found this last night. I just passed through the shop. It's actually a pretty nice one. It's you know, of course, oldie sized, and the whole insert. Let me see if I can get this here. This is a nice looking promo image. This literally could have been hung on a video store wall back in the day. And here it looks like you've got a this is the chapter listing of all of the extended bits that have been put back in, very much in the style of the Aliens box set or the Terminator 2 long version. And then what's really cool, this is kind of like the Laserdisc of Body Heat, the remastered one. You get a whole letter from Lawrence Kasdan himself talking about the film. I kind of scanned this, and he kind of mentioned about how it wasn't really very you know, very well received, because of course, you know, it came out up against Tombstone, and, you know, we fought with the studio a bit, and so he really is happy he's able to allow people to see his longer version. Show you the back. So I mean, you know, the chapter list already takes up the whole panel, so you're basically getting a box for a whole film. And I'm really excited to see this long version. I've always wanted to pick this up because it's been a while since I've seen the regular one, but I kind of have a soft spot for it. I think it kind of got kind of got a raw deal coming out against Tombstone. Um, and Tombstone itself was originally supposed to run like 3 hours and was hacked down. And I think it really shows. I'd love to see a long version of Tombstone finally come out, more than just the little few scenes that were on the Laserdisc at the end tacked on, or some of those were reincorporated into the director's cut DVD, but there's supposed to be a lot more. But yeah, I'm really excited to have that. I actually have the first volume Laserdisc set of Golden Age of Looney Tunes, but the version I got was in a horrible condition. Yeah, I've noticed that on a lot of eBay listings. Anytime you have a thicker box, those sides are very, very prone to getting dinged up or broken and stuff. But yeah, it's actually ironic. I never thought I was going to pick any of these up, but just all of a sudden, while I was making my last video, I just uploaded. All of a sudden, I found 1, and then 3, and then 2, and then just on eBay by chance, because I have a safe search for Looney Tunes just in case a cheap one ever pops up. This literally got here this morning. This is box 4. So this is the other one I went over in the start of this stream, but I'm so excited to finally be able to go through these. And of course, you know, the more you go up in numbers, the greater the rarity. But, you know, I will say, you know, as you can see, there's a little bit of wear here and there. You know, you're gonna be very hard pressed to find one of these in perfect shape. And if you do, you're probably gonna pay a lot more because people are so willing to find these. And again, you're competing against both Laserdisc people and animation people. So, I was actually quite lucky finding, you know, the first 4 in good shape. So it is doable, and I didn't pay a lot for them. But again, box 5 is going to be the one where it's like, oh, you paid like $60 or $70 for the first 4, and now it's going to be $300 for the 5th one. So yeah, it is doable. I just the easiest thing, just do like I did, just set up a save search on eBay for Looney Tunes Laserdisc, you know, or I just did one for Looney Tunes and just put it in the Laserdisc category. But it did take a while because it was just, you know, they usually pop up for like super expensive prices, and you know, if you're not careful, you'll pay through the nose for one. It gets there and it's literally beat the crap. Let's see. If you have the chance, I would like to see your thoughts on this box set once you get the chance to watch it. Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I'm as soon as I can set aside 200+ minutes to watch the whole long Wyatt Earp, I'm super excited. I didn't even know that existed. I found it on the LDDB once. I was looking up the regular one because I was thinking about picking it up, and I still will if I find a cheap one because I wanted to rewatch it. And I knew the DVD was like a very early disc, and it was a port of the Laserdisc, and it was a flipper. And anytime you get into that territory, it's usually not going to be very good for picture quality. And I know the Blu-ray is like also a pretty early Blu-ray and not very good, and very few extras, and of course the theatrical cut only. So as soon as I found that, I put it on my watch list. I never thought I'd find it. So I'm really excited to check it out, but I'm sure picture quality is probably going to be on par with the standard Laserdisc version of the theatrical cut. Let's see. What other Laserdisc box sets do you have? Oh, quite a few, actually. I uploaded, I can't remember how many parts I had to split it into, but I did a whole overrun of my box sets. So if you want, you can check that out. I go through and show off all the inserts and the pamphlets and everything. But yeah, I actually wound up getting most of the big ones. I never really intended to. I started collecting the Disney titles, and then I started wanting to go for all of their big CAV boxes. So I have a couple of those. And those are really nice collectors. They're great art pieces, but of course, anytime you have to ship a box set, that's going to be expensive. I did get lucky on some because there have been some estate sales where someone had a really great collection and sold it to some of the local stores. There was one here locally. There were so many. It was a guy's estate. He had been a lifelong collector, and most of his titles were still sealed. And it was like 8,000 DVDs. It was like 1,000 Blu-rays, 8,000 DVDs. I think like 1,000 VHS tapes, and then about 750 to 1,200 Laserdiscs. and those have just been picked over for like 3 years now. But I remember walking in, and they just had a thing on the wall, and it was literally like supermarket shopping because it was Signature Collection Jaws box set next to the big Dances with Wolves box set next to the My Fair Lady box set, and all of them were like literally dirt cheap, and I'm just sitting there like, take my wallet, take it away now. But the biggest find there was that I managed to get the AC3 reissue uncut, well, long version of the Alamo. That's probably my most important Laserdisc in terms of exclusivity, because that's literally the only way to see it, and it is the AC3 repressing, which adds AC3, and so there's a lot less of them. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as the older ProLogic only one, but that's a really important title because the lone long print MGM has let just rot. There was a big campaign to try and save the Alamo and provide funding to restore it. Robert Harris tried to get MGM to let them do it, and it just never happened. So as far as everybody knows, it's pretty much at this point, it's probably not usable at all. Or if any of it is, it's going to be like an extremely difficult job. So to date, that's the only way to see the long version. But yeah, I have too many box sets to remember off the top of my head. They're fantastic, but they're kind of hard to store. They take up a lot more space. But most of them you can do on shelves. I do have a box on top of my shelf though with the oversized giants. The ones that refuse to fit on any shelf. And of course, most people know these already. It's Fantasia, Dances with Wolves, My Fair Lady is just a little bit too tall. And then the T2 box is a little bit too tall as well. As tall as the Fantasia one is, the Dances with Wolves one is the one that's really impossible to shelve. But on the flip side, it's probably my favorite box set packaging ever. I mean, it's really elaborate, and I absolutely love it. You could just set that on a coffee table, and that is a display piece. So let's see. I haven't seen Wyatt Earp, but I really enjoy Tombstone. Glad to see I'm not the only one that likes T1 a little more than T2. Oh yeah, no. For me, it's no contest. I enjoy T2. I like a lot of things in the long version. But there's some things I think that are too much, and I do think that the shorter version runs better. So personally, if I could have T2 with like 2 or 3 scenes from the long version, I think it'd be really good. But that being said, T2 is nothing compared to T1. T1 is lean, mean. It is a pure thriller. It's beautifully made. You don't even think of it having a low budget. It's absolutely fantastic. I say it all the time, but to me, that T1 is the reason why I have any respect for James Cameron at all. That is the one James Cameron film I'm like, no, this is great. This is a masterpiece. This is perfectly made. And I really enjoy T2, but for me, it's not as strong as T1 because it's got so much stuff going on. And yes, it's very inventive. And yes, it has the amazing CDS original sound mix and the amazing groundbreaking visual effects. But for me, it doesn't have the same potency as the first one. Because I think the first one is so much more focused because, it's able to do that. Again, it's leaner and meaner in a lot of ways. But that being said, I still really like T2. I do like The Abyss. But I do think Cameron has this really strange habit of, okay, I've made this movie. Yes, it's too long to fit enough showtimes in a day. I've got to trim it down. So instead of trimming down on, some of the fat, I'm going to go in and rip out the important character scenes because that makes sense. Not. And then when he makes these director's cuts or video versions, he puts those back in and then puts back in other stuff. So then it's like super long. But then again, that may be just my opinion, but that's how it always seems to me. Let's see. What's your current LD viewing configuration? It's pretty simple. It's again, my main TV is the Sony XBR 960 HD CRT, which is Sony's flagship. It was one of the 2 or 3 models that has the super fine pitch tube, and the comb filter on it is amazing. So I just run straight composite in. The 960 is of course a 16:9 screen, so it actually has a perfect zoom mode for watching letterbox films from Laserdisc, you're able to do it perfectly for scope. It's a little bit dodgy for like 166. So for some of those, I just leave them native, native 4:3, which still looks perfectly fine because the black levels on this thing are so great that you don't even really notice the black pillar boxing bars on the side. I mean, the blacks are absolutely pitch on this thing. It's an absolutely amazing piece of tech. And outside of getting a a Lumagen, a DVDO, a crazy awesome scaler, I don't think you could do better for the money because I only paid $50 for it, and it's been my main set for 2 or 3 years now, and everything looks great on it. That being said, it's quite large. There's a lot of quirks. It took me like 5 or 6 weeks to get all the tweaks done and do the convergence because the geometry on these things is really, really difficult. And then I actually picked up on Craigslist for literally a guy was throwing them out, and I noticed, I'm like, hey, that kind of looks familiar. I picked up the 4.3, I think it's the XS955 variant. It's a little bit more roughed up, and I just picked it up because it was literally free and they were throwing it out, and I had to twist my dad's arm and call in every favor that he owed me to move another one of these behemoths. But if you want the best TV overall for Laserdisc, I'd say it's going to be either one of those, but the 955 has the advantage because it is 4.3. But because these TVs were, designed for HD, all your HD content or component content in 16:9 will be, letterboxed inside the 4.3 frame instead of being in the 16:9 frame. But that being said, I still wind up using my 960 for most everything. I actually think it's a tiny bit, maybe a tiny smidge sharper, because it is the professional model versus the other one was the consumer model. It has a couple more options in the menu and lets you fine tune the Sony image processing enhancement. You can't turn it entirely off, but you can fine tune it, and it makes Laserdisc look amazing. In terms of sound, I have a Onkyo. It's the TX-NR626 receiver. It's a 7.1 receiver. It has all the necessary decoding for matrixing in there. It has Dolby Pro Logic 2X. I started out having 5.1, and then I upgraded my mains to tower speakers. All my speakers are old 90s era clip speakers, which are great, and you can pick them up for literally nothing. I just tried to speaker match them, and I jumped from 5.1 to 7.1. It's actually been a really nice benefit for matrixed audio tracks. The newer Dolby 2X really does some good work with maintaining the mono surround of a Dolby surround track very well. But yeah, that's pretty much how my setup is. It's very simple. I've been meaning to make a setup video, but I'm kind of crammed into one room at the moment, and it's really like the super cheap setup. And that being said, I did invent or kind of pick up some like super cheap ghetto home theater ideas from some other places. So I don't have speaker stands. I have bar stools, but they actually work really well. It looks a little silly when you see 4 speakers on bar stools, but it actually works. But yeah, it actually works, and it's very simple, straightforward. My main player is the Panasonic LX900, which I love. I love it to death. I think it's about the best player you can get outside of the crazy awesome HLD XO and X9 category and stuff, because it's beautiful, clean picture. You don't have all the noise from like my old D702 was great, but it had a lot of noise and ringing in the picture. And then I have the DVL 700, which is great and super reliable, but it has some inherent noise reduction going on that you can't turn off, so the picture's a little soft. But yeah, I love the 900, and it's got digital output, which is my main need. And the one I use primarily, I bought from a guy who installed an AC3 mod, so I'm able to run my AC3 discs, and it's just a killer machine. I did pick up the one Peter was selling, and I've been playing around with that and run some discs through that, simply because I always was on the lookout for backup because I loved it so much, and they're not as common as some of the others. But I think it's really the sleeper player because it's got all of the great picture quality you need, and it doesn't run the same price as like even the D704 and the other like more well-known ones, but I think the picture quality is so much better. I remember when I plugged it in for the first time, I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm sure it's going to be a little bit better. I was like, should I really spend more money on a Laserdisc player? Can it be that much better? And I plugged it in and I put in, let's see, I think it's the letterbox for a few dollars more. There's one scene where I really noticed the ringing on the faces and the heads in one of the, you know, big desert landscape scenes. And I put it in and I'm like, yeah, I remember this one had a lot of ringing on it. And I put it in and I hit play and I went through that chapter. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, oh my God, they weren't kidding. This is like night and day. So I've been with the 900 ever since. And so I'm excited to finally have a backup one to play around with. I probably need to downsize some of my players. So I started with one and then started accumulating ones people were throwing out or ones I'd rescue and stuff. So let's see what's over here. I love T2. It's a fantastic movie, but I really love the gritty thriller style of the original. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I really do. Like I said before, I really like T2. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle on the two versions. But yeah, I think T1 is much better because it's so much more focused. Ah, sweet. Yeah, happy to be live. Thanks. I have a 900 too. Oh yeah, 900s are just they're something else really, because you know I never heard of it until I read there was like a it was a players recommended thread or like stacking up different players in terms of performance on the Laserdisc database forums, and I'm reading about some players I've never heard of, and then I'm like, Panasonic? The only Panasonic I ever used was in a classroom, and it actually kind of looked like the 900. I can't remember the number for the life of me. It wasn't a 600 or anything, but it was like one of the more educational style ones. And I remember I found it in a classroom once when I was in college, and I pulled it out and I plugged it up, and I was just curious because it was like covered in 6 inches of dust. And you know, it kind of sort of worked, but you know, of course, it was still technically barcoded in service, even though it looked like it hadn't been used in 20 years. But I was like, I didn't know they really got into the Laserdisc market that much, but it can't be that much better. It is, trust me. Okay. Just one more question. When you film your videos, what type of setup do you use? I'm wanting to film some videos, but not sure how to film them. Well, I hemmed and hawed about it for a very, very long time. I'm glad you asked this because currently I don't really have any like major gear, and I'm like, you know, there's so many things I want to do, but I'm like, you know, no, it won't look that good, and no, I need a better computer. I need to get better at editing software and stuff. But I finally got fed up, and I'm like, you know what? I got to get something out there. So what I did literally was I suddenly realized, you know, all the camcorders I grew up with and the DV cams and stuff, you know, they were helpful, but it's still nothing compared to the camera that's actually in your phone these days. So what I did was I turned off all of the photo enhancements and stuff, and I just started using my phone, and I got a phone mount for a little cheap $25 tripod and a little lav mic to attach to it, which was like 10 or 15 bucks. And you can actually look some of this stuff up. There's tons of, you know, great starter videos for, you know, equipment to start making YouTube videos or how to use your phone. But yeah, it literally works. Then I tried some of the freeware editing programs, and I've been using the Shotcut program for a while, which is totally free, but it is pretty bare bones. I've used a lot of different editing systems before, so I can kind of figure out my way around. But of course, everyone's different and puts things in different places. But it's actually worked pretty well. The only trouble is I have a small storage size on this phone, so I fill this up in about like 29 or 30 minutes, and then I have to go, oh wait, I've been talking into my phone for 25 minutes extra for no reason, and then I got to go dump everything off and stuff. So I've really got to get a real camera just so I can load it with a big SD card, so then I can just go laser crazy for like 10 hours. But yeah, no, it's definitely doable. You might have to play around with your lighting a bit. I finally found a place. I got one of those cheap desk lamps, the little plastic ones you can get at Walmart or Target, anywhere. And I put a decent bulb in it, and I kind of turned it on, kind of moved it around. Because if you're doing Laserdisc, I don't know if you ever noticed, I had to get this kind of specific angle. I just got one of those little foldable tables, and I was trying to get it to where I didn't have a lot of glare on the jackets, and be able to show the front and the rear and the labels and stuff. So, it's just do it the best you can, but, just definitely play around with getting your setup right. But it's definitely doable. I've just got to get a bit of a budget together to actually, I've been meaning to build an editing PC for years, and it seems like every time I go to, I'm like, okay, I've got this much, and I read a bunch of articles, and I'm like, I really need like a couple of grand to do this, don't I? Oh crap. so, so anyway, it's definitely doable. But yeah, currently I'm just using my phone, and I've tried some of the extra apps you can get that are supposed to unlock more of the potential of your camera, but a lot of those, you do have to pay for. But it is possible to do with the standard camera app if you turn off, all the limitations, and of course, obviously turn off the flash and turn off the recording time limit. But I would definitely recommend getting an external mic. You can get mics made for phones or that work with phones, because that is a big help, because the internal audio on this is not going to do very much. Let's see. Let me get some water here. All right. A-Track Master says, I have 35 LEs. Oh, hey, that's a good start. I guess the question would be, did you ever intend to have that many? Or were you like me, you just got started for one or two things, and you blink and you got 35, and then 35 becomes 70, and so on and so forth. But yeah, the more you get into it, the more you find, man, I really like this dead format. There's one Laserdisc player, those 4 sides, which is the LDW1. Yeah, I've seen those. I've actually seen some pop up on Craigslist. I've never seen one in person, but I was like, man, this is something else. This can't possibly work. But I did read somewhere like it's supposed to be a good, solid player. But I don't think like if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think the picture quality is like like super top tier. But it is cool. You can technically watch a movie straight through without actually removing a disc. So you get the side flip, and then instead of going to I think they used to call it the platter break, and you have to remove disc 1 and then put in disc 2. You can just have your player do that for you. But of course, that means everything's got to move a lot more. So I'm sure it's probably a lot more prone to wear and tear on the tracks and gears inside. But yeah, they are super cool. Let's see. What are you thinking about the Sony 400 Blu-ray changer? Space saver for me. I know it's probably going to be very expensive. Pretty much all carousel DVD players were like exorbitantly expensive, and then they kind of stopped making them because it's more like a commercial item. I knew I'd heard of a Blu-ray changer, but I've never been one for carousels. I've had too much experience with CD carousels always breaking down, and I'm so persnickety. I like putting one thing in at a time and then removing it when I'm done and putting it back in the case. So yeah, I mean, definitely if it works and if it's not like super expensive. I just always think of the DVD ones where it's like, oh, it's a 400 DVD changer. That's exactly the same player as a regular one. The carousel could probably break, but it's only $3,500 instead of $100 for a regular one. But again, I think that's more because they're more designed for like commercial applications and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be cool. It'd be like having your own Blu-ray jukebox. Let's see. Disney ruined Fox. Yeah, I was reading all the Variety reports, and you're reading about all of the parking spaces being painted over and all the immediate layoffs and stuff. Of course, me being the film geek that I am, I'm like, Daryl Zanuck is rolling over in his grave and it'll never be the same. But, you got to keep in mind that, modern Fox is not, original Zanuck era Fox, and it's not, 60s era Fox. With that being said, with Fox still being a player, even though it was under Murdoch and all that stuff, and it was more about being, you know, a big corporate giant, but pretty much all the studios were like that this day, in this day and age anyway. There wasn't really, you know, the Fox identity as it was, but again, all the studios are kind of that way. My thing is like, I don't know why Disney has to get their hands on everything, and how that can't be seen as a monopoly, you know. And you know, a lot of people have echoed this sentiment, and I'm kind of just repeating what they've said. But basically, you know, what it essentially means is a lot of people out of work, and it's one less avenue for, you know, motion pictures. It's a one less place, one less option for you to have to go and get your picture made. And Fox was one of the majors, you know, who was still, you know, willing to somewhat seemingly try and take some risks here and there. And you know, they you know, kept going with the X-Men franchise because, you know, that's the you know, the rise of the comic book film has really driven the industry to, you know, for the past 5-10 years at least. um, and so they were still, you know, chugging along essentially, but they were, you know, not doing exactly what the others were. So it was a bit different, and they tiptoed into the R-rated superhero film and had success with that as an example of, you know, doing some different stuff. So yeah, I don't, they're keeping some of the Fox names and they've spun off some things, but you know, it definitely does, you know, hit you right here that, you know, that the lot is technically not going to be what it once was, or, you know, are they going to sell off major portions? But you know, in any case, it'd be just like, you know, when older studios finally died or merged, you know, or like back originally when 20th Century merged with Fox. They were two different studios. Or, you know, like the one that I would think of is when RKO got run into the ground, and, you know, the lot was eventually sold off, or how Warner Brothers sold their lot, or, you know, how they used to have there was the Columbia Ranch, and that got sold off, you know. So eventually all this stuff goes. And oh gosh, it's one there. There's this really great quote. It was I know it's David O. Selznick, and I know I'm going to butcher it because I can't remember the exact wording off the top of my head. But he was talking about how, you know, Hollywood is not meant to last, and, you know, it'll be there'll be a wind that blows the last studio prop over the desolate wasteland of the former, you know, glorious studio backlot, because there'll be nothing left eventually. I wish I could remember the exact wording. It's just a fantastic quote, and that was David O. Selznick, who probably knew better than anybody, even though he really kind of like burned himself out like faster than anybody else did. Um, but anyway, let's see, moving on. Do you have Wall-E on DVD? No, I don't. I've been meaning to pick up the Blu-ray for ages. I have seen the Blu-ray, and the great, beautiful HD master, beautiful sound design. Pretty much a good majority of the Pixar films really have great sound design. Of course, they're always like, you know, AV demo discs. So I've picked up a couple, and I've been meaning to pick that one up, but like a lot of Disney related materials, they usually carry a higher price tag. So I try and pick them up used at decent prices or when they go on sale. And I'm sure that's going to come to 4K at some point. I'm sure most of the Pixar stuff will, as well, especially the later ones. But I don't know if Wall-E, I don't know what the native resolution was. I don't know if it would be like a 2K upscale or something. But yeah, I've been meaning to pick up that on Blu-ray for ages. Let's see. I really hate the 7.1 mix of Scarface. Um, I did kind of sample that. I did pick up the Blu-ray of Scarface. I was happy that Universal put the original Dolby Stereo on. I was like, wow, I can't believe this. That was actually the reason why, well, the reason why I bought it. Best Buy had a sale, and it included the 1932 original, and I was like, wow, I never got the DVD of the 32 Scarface. Okay, and it has the Dolby Stereo. And it's like, it's in a DTS codec, so it's not like lossy, but, you know, it doesn't sound as good as the standard letterbox Laserdisc that I have. And I didn't really listen to I didn't watch the whole film, the remix, but I listened to it a bit, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's okay. I don't know the film as well as a lot of other people, but I was like, yeah, it's not really necessary. You know, at least they have the original on there for a change, so that's something. I like the 1984 Scarface Laserdisc. Yeah, I mean, I don't have the signature box. but I have the standard letterbox one, and it's great. You know, the picture quality is very good. A lot of Universal letterbox catalog titles from that era are really solid and really good. I still love the one they did for Casino, the one that doesn't have AC3 on it. That was one of the first discs I ever had. I got it at a garage sale. It didn't even have inner sleeves for the disc. It was like 50 cents. And I used to use that as a test disc and a demo disc. And I was like, man, this ProLogic really sounds good. It almost sounds 5.1, and the picture quality is great. Just remember to keep your Simpsons DVDs. I'm sure Disney will not let you watch certain episodes in the future. Oh yeah, I'm sure. They have to figure out how to first get it fully legal to their side, because a lot of their acquisitions still have ownership that's shared by other people, and then I'm sure there might be, you know, editing or censorship or licensing. You never know, stuff can pop up. But yeah, Disney seems pretty reticent to get stuff reissued on disc, especially in HD. Let's see. Okay, Wall-E is much better than Frozen. Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy statement to make. I can concur with that. At least the Matrix 4K is much more accurate than the old Blu-ray. Yeah, but I gotta admit, I was like, you know, I was so happy that they went away from the green that I railed about for a long time, because that actually happened on the 2004 DVD box set reissue, and then that's where the whole green recoloring and messing with the black levels and stuff happened. But on this new 4K master, it seems like, yeah, we did all that, but you know, we always kind of wanted it to be a little blue, so we made it a little bluish. So if you look at it, it's like, well, the green's gone, but I didn't think that was blue originally. So for me, in terms of picture, I still, I mean, I've had it for so many years and watched it for so many years. I still go for the 99 DVD. I'd love to find the Laserdisc, but I know it's pretty much the same master. I even have the letterbox tape, which is the same master on tape. And I did actually see a 35 millimeter print in a theater a couple years ago, and they actually let me look at it, and it had markings for dye transfer IB, because it was during that small run of the resurgence of dye transfer Technicolor printing. And I mean, it looked great, and it looked kind, you know, from what I remember, because I'm kind of going back on memory here, but it was a couple years ago, and it pretty much, you know, the 4K does seem like it's pretty spot on, but it does seem like it goes over into the blue territory a bit. And I know some people have found some screen caps. They put some screen caps, like if you dig through the whole Blu-ray.com forum thread, which is like, you know, 100 pages long. There's a couple little snafus here and there, so it's not perfect, unfortunately, but it's better than what we had. But I don't think it's still like where it should be. So let's see what next. I love THX Laserdisc. They have tons of movies on Laserdisc that have THX that are not on DVD. Yeah, I think back then, I know Culture Dog's gone over this some, and I know I've mentioned it some in my collection videos. Back then, the THX stamp was more of a seal of approval, just like it was for theaters, and I think that's, you know, what they intended to do. It didn't mean that they were making it themselves. It just meant that, you know, you have the official seal that the picture and sound quality is, you know, at the spec it should be. I always loved that. I grew up seeing that even on tapes, you know, for the first time, and I was like, wow, this is going to be great. It made you feel special, like you had the THX digitally mastered edition. And then, of course, you grow up later on and see it on DVDs that are, you know, pretty crummy, and then eventually just kind of fell off, because I think, you know, so many other studios started doing special editions, and they'd advertise, you know, digital masters and stuff. And but it's still really great to see the logo or see the original sticker if it's still on a Laserdisc jacket or anything. So I do have a lot of nostalgia just for the logo, and I still am. It still kills me that THX doesn't exist for theaters anymore. I mean, it does in very select locations, but you know, there used to be a standard for you know, film exhibition, and it just isn't there anymore. I'm a lifelong theater geek. I've worked in tons of different theaters, been in every type of theater possible. And what I hated about the digital changeover is that it just removed quality control, and basically people stopped caring. And as bad as the picture can be in places, the sound is even worse. And when you think back to films from the 90s, you were seeing them on film prints generations away from the original negative, and you were either listening to Dolby Digital or more likely Dolby Stereo SR still, because the Dolby Digital would fall out all the time. And they sounded great. And they still sound great. And you listen to the Laserdisc track, of that same mix, and it sounds great. And then you see a movie with all the technical know-how that you can possibly have in 2019, and the experience in the theater is just meh. And it's just like, I'm sitting there like, I never want to go to a movie theater ever again. This is so depressing. Let's see. I have Matrix on HD DVD. Oh, good for you. I never really got into HD DVD because, by the time Blu-ray won out eventually, and I knew HD DVD was kind of like, some of the tech specs were inferior to Blu-ray, but I think it does have some interesting things, because a lot of things got made for the HD DVD format first and then moved over to Blu-ray, and some things are actually still technically better on HD DVD than the Blu-ray, because the Blu-ray got additional passes of DNR and stuff. Some of them have lossless audio where the Blu-rays don't, and I know there's a couple where the quality on the HD DVD is supposed to be better. But of course, HD DVDs could have rot, as we all laser fans know how that's like. And I know Warner was the studio that supposedly is the one that's supposed to have the most rotted discs. So hopefully your Matrix still plays. Actually, that being said, there was one I knew for a long time, because I go on about it all the time. I love the first Mission Impossible, and I knew that the HD DVDs for 1 through 3 were the same old transfer as what's on the old crappy Blu-rays, but they're supposed to be a little bit better and not have as much DNR going on. And when the MI 1 through 3 got reissued in Scandinavian territories, they got lossless audio upgrades, and the masters kind of went back to the HD DVD mastering level, and they have a bit more bit rate to them and stuff. So those are the best that you can get for 1080p Blu-rays, and even the repackaged ones in the new 4K releases are still the old crappy US ones. So that's an example where I was finally actually able to see for myself. And as much as I hated those old crappy Blu-rays, those ones from seemingly the HD DVD source, they are just a little bit better. And I'm like, oh, thank you. These will never come to 4K. And that being said, Mission 1 still is missing its original audio track that's only on the Laserdisc, or if you get to see a 35mm print screening with that amazing LFE that I love so much. And so I still swear by it. It's the only way to see it with the original LFE channel, and it's just so much fun, and I adore that film so much. And of course, you can pick up the THX Laserdisc and have a demo disc for like $1. It's such a common title, and I think everybody should have it. That bass is also on the Dolby Surround PCM, so if you don't have a demodulator, you can still hear the 2.0 mix, because the print I saw, it had the AC3RF track, the digital track, was spotty, so it kept cutting in and out, which was an inherent problem of Dolby on film. The digital track, because it was placed in between the sprocket holes, which is really a terrible idea, because it's the first thing to go when you're running a film print, it would default back to the SR 2.0 matrix track. And yeah, that's exactly how it was in the Laserdisc. So yeah, if you don't have that Laserdisc, grab it. It's super cheap, and you'll love it forever. Do you have any anime Laserdisc? I've never really been a big anime person. I just never quite knew where to start. For me, my thing is Speed Racer. I've been a Speed Racer fan since I was a kid, because I got the movie compilation VHS tape and literally watched it till it fell apart, and never knew that the other episodes existed, because they just weren't available. There were a couple tape runs, and they were very hard to find. So for years, I had the movie tape with 3 episodes, and then I had a beat up X rental copy of the penultimate episode with the dramatic reveal and stuff that was fuzzy and cut out for like half the episode. So basically, I only knew 3.5 episodes. So I've been trying to pick up all the Speed Laserdisc releases. I've got most of them because I've been working on trying to research the various releases, because there's been a lot of issues with time compression over the years, and the new Funimation release on Blu-ray is great. It's from the Japanese HD transfers, but they're not perfect. It's got some warts, and there's still some time compression issues and flaws. And then the big expensive head bust box set with the Japanese version I did pick up on the Black Friday sale. I've been making my way through that. So you can finally see all the episodes in Japanese with the English subtitles. So that's really as far as I get into anime. Of course, in terms of just Japanese animation in general, of course, I've seen most of the Miyazaki films and stuff like that, and of course, Grave of the Fireflies, which is a must for anyone, and just be prepared to have not a box but a mountain of tissues to get through the whole thing. I think the worst time was when I saw it in a theater with an entire audience, and if you can ever imagine that, if you've seen Grave of the Fireflies, imagine watching it in a full theater and it's not even over yet, and you can't even hear the dialogue or music anymore from all the sniffling and the boo-hooing. But yeah, I've got to do more anime. Again, I've never known where to start. I've been wanting to see Akira for a long time, but the Criterion's super expensive, and I know there's a lot of discussion on color timing issues, sound issues, and stuff. So I've been holding out to try and find the Criterion and find it at a decent price. Let's see. Do you have lots of THX Laserdisc? Yeah, I do actually, because they wound up giving the seal to a lot more things than you'd realize, and not all of them are on the front. Some are like more stealth THX titles, because sometimes I put in a disc, I don't even realize it until the logo comes up. I'm like, oh, and I look on the back of the jacket, and it's like down at the bottom, and then I'm like, oh, there's the THX sticker. Oh, the little logo, and some don't have it at all. Some were just on the outer sticker, and if you don't have the shrink wrap, you wouldn't know. But yeah, they wound up doing a lot more than you'd think. I don't know how many I have. I guess I'd have to count out my discs someday. I think the Laserdisc database, it does tell you if a disc is THX, but I don't know if you can look at your collection and see. But I'm sure it's a good amount. What's your favorite Angry Video Game Nerd episode? Oh gosh. I don't know if I could pick one. That's one of the few big internet personalities that I've followed through the years. I kind of found him earlier on, back when I was in college, and I always liked that his shtick never it never really overpowered the game criticism. And then a lot of those games I'd actually played as a kid. But as a kid, when I played those games, I never knew that they were, terrible or bad at first. I thought I was just a terrible player. And so I'd get frustrated. And if you beat level 1, it was like, oh my gosh, celebrate. You've literally beaten the game. And then level 2 starts and you're like, oh God, oh no, this is even worse. But yeah, I don't know if I could pick a favorite AVGN episode. I mean, I guess the easiest answer would be like, the Rob episode or something, but I still get the goofy song from I think it's the Ikari Warriors episode. They basically invent a song that runs through the whole video, and it's the "Where Did Their Hair Go?" I can't tell you how many times that's popped in my head all the time. So it may be that one. I don't know. I really love them all. I still watch his uploads, and I like that he's branched out into some other things. And he just did a really nice one comparing some of the main, I think like 10 or 12 main versions of Dracula, comparing it to the Stoker source novel, and like trying to look for which is technically the most accurate. And I kind of knew some of those, but he did some extra versions that I didn't really know a whole lot about. And so that's actually a really nice piece that actually goes into some really intricate details, because a lot of people really haven't read the novel, and it's a very long and rambling novel. It took me years to, it took me several attempts as a kid, and I've always been a big reader, and it is a difficult novel to read. So yeah, that's actually a really nice piece. And like I said, he's kind of branched out to some other things, which is nice to see. Judging by the trailer, the 4K of The Matrix looks much closer than the DVD. The 4K seems less blue than the remastered Blu-ray. Yes, I forgot to mention, there is a difference. The 1080p remastered Blu-ray is really just kind of screwed up. It's kind of all over the place. If you go on the Blu-ray forum, like, that's the first thing you'll see. Everybody's just like, yeah, just don't even bother with the remastered disc. Warner Brothers has kind of been having, and a lot of the studios have kind of been having trouble with these new 1080p remastered disc from a 4K. Because at first it was like the 4K discs were the ones that had the problems, and they were good at making the 1080p discs, like Goodfellas, for example. But now it seems like either the 1080p disc is just the old Blu-ray repackaged, or it might have some issues because they were just focused on the 4K disc. So yeah, that is absolutely true. And it's kind of hard for me to judge, because I have some 4K discs, but I'm still not really 4K capable, because I've been waiting for a really good display that didn't cost a lot of money, that I was happy with. And yeah, I think I may just have to give up and get either one of the TCL P series or the equivalent Vizio, which is like the only one that's not a not a full OLED that can do proper HDR and stuff, because that's like your only budget option, and of course budget is like $650. So I've just been kind of trying to wait a little bit till the studios kind of figured out how to do things properly and get things going, and hopefully the tech started catching up and the prices started falling off. Because I kind of figured it'd probably be like the early years of DVD and the early years of Blu-ray, where if you jumped in immediately, you probably have to upgrade your stuff pretty early on. It's going to cost a lot of money and stuff, and plus they were still figuring out how to do stuff, which is anytime you have a new format or new image certification, so on and so forth. Film looks so much better than digital. I mean, personally, my heart is with you on that. I do agree. From preservation standpoints and technical standpoints, digital is going to be much more stable, and you can scan film to digital and technically present it better than a film print would. I know Robert Harris has gone on record saying he'd rather see the 4K Lawrence of Arabia than the 70mm restoration print, because film has so many inherent defects, and with proper 4K DCP projection, you can overcome that stuff. But of course, that's talking about top of the line everything, which is not going to be every theater. I think film is extraordinarily important, and I think it's not being treated properly and in this day and age. And I think it still has things that digital cannot do, and I don't see why it's such a big thing for people to still shoot film and then process digitally, because a good number of places have been doing that more and more often. It's becoming more popular, and it's very easy to do. The only trouble is, at least in my opinion, a lot of the modern film stocks are trying so hard to keep up with digital and the qualities of digital that they're losing a lot of the inherent qualities of film itself. That combined with people not necessarily shooting different for film and digital, which you have to do. There's kind of a lot of crossing over with that. So a lot of film shoots will shoot, and the resulting film, because they process to a digital intermediate and so on and so forth, you wouldn't really know it unless you suddenly say, oh yeah, that shot has grain structure. Oh, and then you read, oh, this was shot on 3 perf 35mm, blah blah blah, and you're like, okay, but they process digitally, so why did they do it? I mean, I'm glad it's still going, because for a while everybody was like so gung-ho digital, we're just going to kill off film entirely. And it's the same thing how they're doing with Samsung stopped making Blu-ray players, so physical media is dead, long live streaming, blah blah blah. Well, there's still things that streaming can't do. There's a lot that streaming can't do. I don't stream anything. I'm not a streaming person, because all the things I want to do just aren't available. And if they are, it's the wrong version. It's got a bad audio mix, and you have no control over stuff, and it's dependent on your internet connection. So I think physical media versus streaming is a very similar debate. But yeah, I'm with you on. I am a film purist. I am a film geek. You know, anytime an art house theater posts what they have coming up, I'm scouring through and I'm looking and I'm like, okay, please tell me, is this a print? Is this a print? And if it's digital, I'm like, that's probably the same as the Blu-ray. That's the crappy DCP. You know, blah blah blah. I can skip that, so I only go to the film shows. But yeah, yeah, totally with you on that. The HD DVD of Waterworld didn't have the DNR of the old Blu-ray. Yeah, I remember hearing that. That's another one of those. Of course, now Arrow has their big box set out, which looks fantastic, and I'd like to pick it up, but I don't know. I think they sold out of their print run or something, and I think they're supposed to make some more, or like the the slimmed down non-special one. So I've got to check that out. Let's see. 007, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, Poltergeist, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Spaceballs, and Pink Floyd The Wall are way better MGM movies than Christmas Story. That sounds like me as a kid. My dad was one of those who left it on during like the TBS 48-hour marathons, and I just saw pieces of it over and over and over again as a kid. I couldn't stand it anymore. I'm able to take it more seriously now, and I think it does a remarkable job at getting the whole nostalgia of that time period across. I know a lot of people love it. I still can't quite get there because of all the package I have. I'd like to pick up the Laserdisc at some point. I think the Blu-ray is only so-so, and I think it had lossy audio, and I think there was like a reissue that's the same master, but it finally had lossless audio if you can find it. It also kind of feels like film studios don't care about preserving history. They're worried about quote-unquote improving the film, hence the lack of original mixes. Oh, you're preaching to the choir right there. Yeah, absolutely. There's no research. There's none. And if there is, it's some poor guy who works there who's, underpaid and has to try and sneak stuff in terms of the majors, as far as the way I think it is. But it's really the boutique labels that have been stepping up, and actually they're able to get stuff licensed like crazy now. It's starting to get like the old Laserdisc days where studios back then, they were like, oh, video will never take off. Yeah, Criterion can have Casablanca. And then Warner Bros. Suddenly goes, no, we'll never have Casablanca. And then you see Criterion getting titles like On the Waterfront and big, big studio titles again. So it is opening up, but even the boutique labels aren't perfect because they have to use what the studio provides, and the studio can provide, masters with bad audio, or, like Criterion's put out a couple where the master has the teal in it. Like Bull Durham was the one where everybody said, this has got teal all over it. And people are like, what are you talking about? And it's like, look at the jackets of the guys on the baseball field. They're blue in the old ones. The real ones in real life are blue, and now they're teal, and you can literally see it. And then some people are like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, but in the audio side, it never gets discussed. It's like you're usually like the lone voice saying, hey, my old Laserdisc sounds better of this. And then, somebody on a different forum will be like, Laserdisc, what are you, 85 years old or something? And it's like, no, I'm not making this up. But yeah, the whole improving the film thing, yeah, that just kills me. I think that really started to happen in the mid to late 90s, and it doesn't get bandied about as much. It just kind of gets done, and people don't know it has because they don't advertise it. Supposedly the standard 35mm, which is 4perf, is supposed to be roughly 6K to 8K in digital equivalent. Yeah, it's something like that, but because it's analog, you can't translate it directly to digital terminology. But you also have generational loss, so that's talking about the native film itself, like what your perfect negative would be if you shot it right now. But if like you made a print of that'd be a little bit away, and you'd have to make it interpositive, so it'd be like 2 generations away. But yeah, people give film a hard time, but it has a lot more resolution than you'd expect. And when you're looking at old video transfers, you're not seeing anywhere near the resolution it can have, especially if it's an really old one. But yeah, a lot of films, when they actually get proper restorations, can really be shocking. And as far as I'm concerned, HD and HDR are far much more important to classic films than modern films because they can reveal so much. You know, I'm still dying to see. I want to see a proper 4K, proper HDR grading of like a really classic black and white film where they have like a nitrate negative. Like I would absolutely love to see proper 4K HDR of something from the nitrate era. I mean, that would just be amazing. Like the levels of the grayscale you could get across, it would just be fantastic. And I'm sure if I posted that on like the Blu-ray forums or somewhere, people would literally like line up and be like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" I'm like, "No, you don't get it." But yeah, no, it definitely has a lot more to it than people give it credit for. Just wondering, where do you find your Laserdiscs? Do you find them on the wild, or you just buy online? For me, it's few and far between for LDs in the wild. That's usually how it is, especially when I got started. There's always been one main record store that I kind of grew up around, and one day I asked if they had Laserdiscs when I got started, and they pointed me to a little box on the floor in the very back corner, and it had like 3 or 4 discs, and I'm like, "Wow, yay, Laserdiscs!" And then there weren't anymore. And then there finally was a little bin. And then it was like, anywhere I looked, there never were any. I was like, I'll never find them. And it's just been kind of in spurts. I still buy the occasional disc on eBay. I don't do a whole lot, but if it's something that I really like, or like a lot of discs or something that's a good price, I'll do it. But I will say what really has been the big one is Laserdisc Forever and group sales. That's been a giant one for me. Probably not so good for my lack of storage and lack of shelving, but that's when it really just kind of exploded. That combined with, I know I mentioned before, the local stores had some estate sales where like some really massive collections came through. And all of a sudden in the past, year or two, it's been like all of a sudden there's more discs coming through. And I'm like, where are these coming from? There were no more. Everybody knows me as the Laserdisc guy because I'm the guy who goes in and, I buy like a UK press into something, and then I buy like 5 Laserdiscs, and they're like, "Why are you buying these?" I'm like, "Well, do you want the long or short answer?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, you're a Laserdisc dude." I'm like, "Well, yeah." They're like, "Only 3 people ever buy these, and you're one of them." So yeah, I have gotten pretty lucky, but I know it's usually very, very spotty for most people. It was that way for me for a long time. But then again, I never intended to have 800 Laserdiscs. So, but yeah, I'd say if nothing pops up locally, and you never have any like lucky Craigslist finds or like Facebook Marketplace or something, anything local, it's just going to be Facebook group sales from Laserdisc Forever or eBay. eBay is always the answer to everything, isn't it? That probably explains how 8-perf movies like Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz get 8K restoration, because they're likely higher quality than 8K, but could be wrong. Those are those aren't actually 8-perf. They're still standard 4-perf 45. Sorry, standard 4-perf 35 mil from the classic era. When you get to higher perforations, that's going to be 70 millimeter, and but 8-perf is actually referring to VistaVision, which was the horizontal format that Paramount came up with. So it took the standard 4-perf 35 mil frame, and it turned it on its side to make a widescreen image that was native widescreen without matting, and it gave a higher resolution. And so it had 8 perfs for each frame because it was now a horizontal one. So that's why Vertigo, when it was restored, it got blown up to 70 millimeter, because the VistaVision frame, when treated natively, can do so because it has so much resolution in it. That's why VistaVision is such an amazing format and has such great quality, even in the standard, because they would have to convert it down to regular 4-perf 35 mil prints. But the whole idea behind that was to have really sharp, proper widescreen that had different aspect ratios you could use in a theater for matting. So it was open-ended, and they wanted to license it out, but unfortunately nobody ever used it. And it was a beautiful format that unfortunately kind of died out. When they scan at 6K and 8K, that's for films that are supposed to have a lot more resolution. So it's going to be your large format films and the other various forms of large format, whether it be VistaVision, Technorama, Super Technorama, and all the ones for, our Tadeo, or you know, everything that was a larger 65 millimeter, 70 millimeter format, because you're having to scan at a higher res to get everything. But usually it's generally thought that 4K will get everything that's on a 35 millimeter print or negative, because of course, you know, older stocks are not what modern stocks are. There's degradation, generational loss. Not everything is a full proper negative. So it's not exactly as cut and dry on that, but it's basically the higher scans are reserved for, you know, things that are natively higher resolution, and 6K and 8K wasn't really used outside of some of the big Warner titles, and Lawrence of Arabia was another. And it's becoming more and more used because the technology is more available. But you know, it started, digital scans were like 1K and 2K, and then everything was 2K, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, this got scanned at 4K. Oh my God, what's that going to be like? But still, to this day, most things can get scanned at high res, but they're still worked on at like 2K and 4K because the workflow would be so expensive and the machinery you need. So, for example, I think Spartacus was, I can't remember if it was a 6K or 8K scan, but I think they did it at 4K and on the new restoration. And then My Fair Lady was the same way. And those are both like the pinnacle of modern restorations. Those two Blu-rays are absolutely staggering. Spartacus itself, I think, is like, I'd say Spartacus is the best Blu-ray on the market today. It's just fantastic. The picture quality is just fantastic, and the 7.1 track is the first home video release to have the full panning dialogue of the original Super Technorama run. I was shocked when I put it on because no reviews mentioned that, and I actually asked Robert Harris over on the Home Theater Forum, and he admitted, yeah, this was the first time outside of the restoration prints where they put the whole thing on, because modern home theaters can actually track it, and it's just fantastic. And it's like $5 or $10. It doesn't have all the extras of the Criterion, so you need the Criterion for the extras. But the Spartacus Blu-ray and the My Fair Lady Blu-ray are just wow. And those are two examples that show that film has a lot more than people give it credit for. Let's see. Oh, thanks for hanging out, 8-Track. Good luck with school tomorrow. That's always fun, isn't it? Let's see. Streaming, in my opinion, sounds like a scam to control what people watch, taking down good movies, not owning the movie in your hands, and the HD is compressed. I agree with you on all those. Yeah, I totally do. Yeah, I can't disagree with any of those. You lose availability, you lose control, you lose special features, you lose commentaries, and you get stuck with whatever they throw up there. And they could throw up something wrong, or an old transfer, or an old, like, imagine if you started streaming Spartacus and it's the old 2010 DNR fiasco HD master that had public decries out there, and Robert Harris was like, you know, what have they done? No one needs to ever say this. They've literally destroyed, you know, all the restoration work I did, you know. And yeah, it's totally, it's a bottleneck in a lot of ways. You with the explosion of the DVD era, with so many things suddenly becoming available, and now they're not available. They haven't made the jump yet because, you know, people think the home video market is dead. You know, you see even TV shows never finish physical media releases of their whole runs. So yeah, it's sad to see what people think is not important anymore, you know. And for a while it's like, oh, this is important because people are buying DVDs like crazy, and so it's like, well, at least we were getting stuff out there. Let's see. Apologies, not those two movies. It's actually North by Northwest. It was 8 per, and Why Would Gone with Women be scanned in 8K? Yeah, I think you're right. North by Northwest was an 8K scan, because it was one of Warner's, I think they call it like the ultra high resolution process or something of remastering, and they've done that on like some of their biggest catalog titles, but then just release a, you know, remastered DVD or the Blu-ray variant. And I don't know if they're worked on it at full 4K or anything. I think they started out at lower, and then I think they made it to 4K because some, like Casablanca and Wizard of Oz, have gotten new passes and new cleanups and stuff. North by Northwest is one where, it is a lot of improvement because the old DVD was a Lowry master and it has shots that have weird color, and it had a 5.1 remix that unfortunately stuck there. And the original mono is only on Laserdisc and is a lot better because it's what the original production team intended in 1959, and not a 5.1 remix like the Vertigo remix where the music overpowers all the scenes. That's one that nobody talks about, and it just kills me. But other than that, the new scan is beautiful. I think it could definitely be improved in 4K with a new pass and then with HDR properly applied. But I was trying to convince them of doing that can be difficult. Just like Universal still has not taken care of their Hitchcock titles properly, and some are just in deplorable state. But anyway, let's see. Why would Gone with the Wind be scanned in 8K? Honestly, I don't think it ever would, because 8K would be like probably overkill. I don't know like the state of the negative, and I know there's been several attempts to like do a reissue and clean up and stuff. Like they've done it like 3, 4, 5 times, and the current Blu-ray is absolutely beautiful to look at. I think they got the the Technicolor registration just right, because it's very easy to do that in the digital realm where you couldn't in the analog realm, and you'd get the Technicolor 3 strips not in perfect registration, so people could like have these rainbowy looking edge halos all over the place because everything wasn't exactly lined up, and if they go off even slightly, you get that sort of rainbowy look. Dodge City is another one where they finally corrected it for the Blu-ray release, and it's much better than the old DVD because the registration is finally on point. But yeah, I don't know if there'd be much of a point in scanning it at 8K because the older a film is, the more unstable the film stock is going to be, the more wear and tear it's going to have. I hope that when Raiders comes out on 4K, it will be much better than the Blu-ray. They need to get rid of the digital tweaks. Oh yeah, but they've been there since the DVD. Most people don't know about them and think, just so long as, there's not a Jedi Rocks number in the middle of Raiders that, oh yeah, it's not a special edition. Well, no, there are little tweaks. I mean, people still complain about the walkie-talkies on the ET DVD replacing the guns, but for me, what kills me is the snake reflection being gone. I'm like, that's such a classic, goof gag, then it makes me feel like I'm actually watching a 30 serial and it was there originally. But honestly, I could live with the 2 or 3 digital tweaks that have been there since the DVD if the color timing and the sound was correct. Like that's at this point, like that's, I could live without there being not being a snake reflection if the color and sound were okay, and they're unfortunately not. And if it does go to 4K, which I think it was finished at 4K, I know they're working on it, so that'll probably just be reissued with an HDR pass, making some difference, and hopefully they don't muck around with Temple and Crusade, because both of those, I think Crusade looks pretty good, and Temple does look pretty good, but if you look at some original stills, lobby cards, trailers, and stuff, it really indicates that it was a lot darker in terms of look and composition, and there's some colored stuff that's not quite there even in the modern HD release, so there's no telling what they could do with that. Let's see, my favorite Blu-ray transfer has probably been her. I mean, that's a good one. That is one of Warner's like top flight restorations, and it's the first time. I mean, they got the full 2:76 Ultra Panavision ratio on the last DVD, but getting it in the HD restoration, I mean, they just totally started from the ground up, and it is just beautiful. And of course, that film won the Oscar for sound design and is one of the important early surround sound titles, I think, in terms of, one of the first films to really get, an idea of stereo ambiance in a big theater, particularly in the chariot scene. And it's just amazing for a 1959 film. And the remix doesn't, it doesn't change anything, but I know some people, like really big Ben-Hur purists, complain that, ever since they put it out in a 5.1 remix, it hasn't been the same. And if you pick up the old Laserdisc from MGM, the Letterbox one or the box set CAB one, it has the original mix in Pro Logic, and I toggle between the two, and it's the same mix. And it's just unfortunate the old one, it's in Pro Logic, so you do get some dialogue bleeding into the back that's unintentional. But it does sound like it feels more accurate to the time period, if that makes any sense. So if you are big on Ben-Hur, I definitely recommend that. And the picture is actually really amazing for early 90s Laserdisc for such a hard film to transfer. It's not the full 276, but it's rather close. And for Laserdisc, it's really impressive. Even just the standard one, I wasn't going to get the box, but I found it, but I was actually really impressed by just the standard letterbox one. So definitely pick that up and check out the audio and see what you think compared to the Blu-ray. But I agree, that's another really great HD restoration on Blu-ray. I've actually got to pick up I got to pick up another copy because I have the box set and mine has a pressing defect where the audio track has like a little bit of noise in it every once in a while. So I have to pick up the standard one just as a replacement. I missed the window for getting a disc replacement from the studio. Let's see. With Disney streaming service and Criterion streaming service, do you think that Warner may open their own archive to streaming? I mean, they do have the Warner archive streaming. At least I think they still do. It's their own site. I want to say, didn't they may have linked with Criterion, so I don't know if they just went back to doing their own separate. And but they do have a good number of their archive, like DVD titles available, and some of the HD restorations they've done for the Blu-rays and stuff. Warner Archive is one of the one of the groups I really respect and admire, and I try to follow everything they do. They also have a really nice weekly podcast, like a little 30-minute thing about each of their new releases and some of the cleanup they're doing or some of the stuff they're bringing back into print. So they're one of the groups I follow religiously. But yeah, I think they still have a streaming option. But again, they might link with somebody else. I don't know. Let's see, the 7.1 mix of ET has a couple audio tweaks, but could be based on the 70mm mix. It could, I suppose. I've never been a big ET person. I guess it was too happy for me. Even as a kid, I never could do it. I was like, yeah, I'll take Close Encounters any day, So I have the first Laserdisc box set that's supposed to have the flipped audio channels, and I've seen it on DVD, I've seen it on Blu-ray and stuff. I guess I need to rewatch it because it's been a while, and try and come at it fresh and not with all the baggage of I'm too cool for this from childhood. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if they just transferred a 70mm mix without really changing anything. Didn't know that Warner had a podcast. Yeah, they do. It's I think it's on their site, and it's also on some of the other podcast sites. Yeah, I didn't know about it for a while either. I found out about it a couple months ago, and it's nice little listens, and they've been doing it for a good number of years now, so you can actually go back and try to find ones for specific Warner archive titles that you're interested in, and they just talk a little bit about some of the releases and some of the cleanup they do, but it's a really nice listen. I've never really been a podcast person, but I found a couple recently that I like to try and listen to, that and Projection Booth mostly, because it's like 3 hours of more geekery. Feels like you're not battling onto yourself in your head. Let's see. I think I went over most everything I had set aside. Does anybody have any more questions or anything? Because I didn't realize I've been blabbing on for a while. I might have to call it a night. And definitely, if you want to, I know I went over them a little bit, but I talked a little more about the Wyatt Earp and Looney Tunes box when I was getting started, just so I didn't have too much dead air. I think it must be like 20 minutes of me rambling and trying to get everything set up at the start of this thing. So it's going to be kind of funny to scrub through the dead space of like 20 minutes when this is all done and finished. let's see. Do you plan to have this bit more often? Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, I'd like to kind of make this a regular thing. I don't know if I have quite the quite the energy of Culture Dog to do it every single week, but this has been fun. So yeah, I'd like to make it a regular thing. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna set a like specific date to do it every single time, but I'll try to make it a more regular occurrence, and at least a bit more professional seeming than how this started, with me just like staring into my webcam for like 25 minutes at the start. Let's see. I also think Citizen Kane and Casablanca look fantastic. Would buy the UHDs in a heartbeat. Oh yeah, yeah. Casablanca is a really interesting one because I think it's far better than people realize, because I think the 4K restoration of Casablanca that got put out on the reissue Blu-ray, a lot of people said, "Oh well, it's just slightly better than the old one. You know, it's not really worth upgrading unless you're like a diehard fan." Well, what the 4K remastering did was, to me, that's the first time, you know, the full grayscale and the full like detailing and tonality of the photography has come across since, you know, a film print or the older video versions. Because for me, the two best versions of Casablanca on video are the 4K remastered Blu-ray and the Criterion CAV Laserdisc, because they're beautiful. They look exactly like a print do. I've seen the best one I've seen. It was a Warner Brothers print shown about a year or two ago, and I got to look at the edge date code. It was made about 1999 or so, so it wasn't from the 50th anniversary theatrical run. But it's just beautiful. It looked better than I had ever seen it, with all kinds of details and and just the photography. And that's one where I think you can really show how, you know, black and white being kind of more videoized looking, because that's my problem with the MGM Laserdisc and the Warner Brothers DVDs and first Blu-ray. They're really nice, but they're like kind of contrasty, and they don't have the same like depth and detail and the black levels. And it's really the grayscale, like the levels between everything just really make everything come across more. But then the Kane restoration is great because it rescued it from that awful Lowry overscrub DVD. Okay, well, thanks for hitting the bell. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do some more live stuff. Live stream. Yeah, it should be. That's what I did it for, so far as I think. Again, this is a learning process for me, so I'm gonna have it up to be rewatched so you can see the beginning and hopefully skip the first 25 minutes of me just staring around. But yeah, so I think that'll do it for this one. And thanks everybody for making this a good one. I gotta say, I was a little worried there for the first 25 minutes or so. I'm like, this is the world's most boring stream, isn't it? But yeah, so I'm gonna call it a night, guys. Thanks for hanging out, and hope to do another one of these pretty soon. And may all your Laserdisc dreams be fulfilled, I guess. All right. Have a good night, guys. Thanks so much.